Well, hello, creatives. I assume that the video has started, and I am here in a virtual room with you from my pandemic headquarters in Ventura, California, which is about 50 miles north of Los Angeles. So I'm going to give this a go. I have no idea how it's going to roll. I have a whole bunch of visuals here, but you won't be able to see them because I have not set up any kind of slideshow due to my technological user error. So I'm just going to be with you here to talk today about what I do as a transformational creative coach and how I got here. What is transformational creative coaching, and what does it have to do with you potentially? I mean, I have a sense that you come from a wide range of artistic and academic creative backgrounds. So I'm going to try to speak to those in both general and specific ways. And let me start by introducing myself. So I'm Dr. Tressa Berman. Some of you may know me. That would be going back quite a ways because I actually was one of the founding organizers of this international conference on the arts in society. So it's really wonderful to be able to come back around, even in this virtual format. Hope so much to be able to connect with you live and in person again soon. So by way of my introduction, I want to say that I am a former professor of art and anthropology. My main training is as an anthropologist, so I consider myself an arts ethnographer and curator and writer and poet and museum specialist and consultant. So from all these career slots, how did I end up giving a workshop on transformational creative coaching? So I'm looking at some notes here just to remind myself and to let you know that this is also part of my training, is being able to speak to an audience that I cannot see and that is not in real time with me. So I'm sure we're all super challenged in different ways in these times. So I just wanted to say that from those career slots with which many of you can identify, how did I come to be a transformational creative coach, and what does that mean? So the short answer is that I had a transformational moment. I had a moment in which all of these learnings, all of these identities, and all of these professional slots and responsibilities, everything came together alongside with my lifetime of learnings and practicing with primarily Indigenous artists, which has been my life's work, healers, and Buddhist monks. Yes, so I did spend some time living in Buddhist temples along the way. And all of these learnings have come together now as one life, my life. So the longer answer goes to the length of my life before I was born. So, don't worry, I'm not going to get into any ruminations about past life theory or ready to launch into long stories about family history, oral history, though that is often part of the anthropological method. But I do want to share with you a little bit about this woman my beautiful grandmother, who was a portrait artist and poet, and her beautiful mother, my great-grandmother and aunts, who were pretty wild flappers in their time, among other things. So then we have on the other side of my family, who are these very stern looking people. Ta-da. So we have the Irish poets, and we have the Jewish Eastern European rabbinical tribe. So why am I sharing all this? Well, for one thing, I was taught by my traditional teachers, particularly one of my Maori teachers from New Zealand, that we introduce ourselves by way of our ancestors, that we give homage also to our ancestors. And most importantly, in terms of my creative work and this work as a transformational creative coach, is to understand my family history as one that has given me the strength of spirit, the creative impulse, and also the epigenetic block factors of certain family dysfunctions, the disruptions of creative energy, the historical turns and persecutions and recoveries or lack of recovery, no recovery. And so these downfalls, if you will, instructed me that what I can do is redirect back to the creative source that drives my own expression as an artist, as a writer, as a thinker, as an anthropologist, all those slots that I first introduced myself as being identified with, and then actually go beyond them. Go beyond them by allowing them to culminate together and integrate into something that is greater than myself, because it includes my heritage, and it includes my progeny, and it includes the very transmission of the knowledge and wisdom gained through the experience. So that is partly what I'm doing here today with you, is connecting. That is, I do hope that on the other side of this screen at another point in time, there is an actual human connection. So that's a little bit about some of the why, what brought me to wanting to investigate some of these questions, some of these tenets, some of these, what I refer to in my work as saboteurs. What are the ways in which we self-sabotage our creativity? What are the actual blocks? One of my writing gurus here in Los Angeles, Jack Greats, who teaches the writing method, which is based on the actor's method, very powerful tools for writers, actors, and artists to recognize that essentially there is no such thing as writer's block. There is no such thing really as artist block. That these, what I call saboteurs, are oftentimes the result of our own inner workings that we have not yet brought to awareness. And so they sit as if they were some kind of, often even a physical sensation of, if any of you have ever experienced that, I'm sure you have in one way or another, whether it's getting ready for a class or getting ready to produce a curriculum or sitting down with your computer or your easel or piano, wherever it is that you get switched into your creative energy, that there are moments where you're just not feeling it. So what are those moments? So I had another, what I refer to as a breakdown moment. So that I was looking, across all of my family history for the continuity as well as for the brokenness and the possibility for healing that through creativity, through art, through writing. And I also had a breakdown moment that came in one of these professional slots when I decided to jump off the ivory tower. And I left a very comfortable academic job and decided to, go out on my own as a social entrepreneur, a creative, independent curator, and whatever I emerged as, I actually really didn't know at the time that it was going to transform into anything. All I knew is that I couldn't keep doing what I was doing in the way that I was doing it. So it was a kind of a breakdown moment that resulted in me actually leaving academia in its formal institutional garb, or actually what is straitjacket. Not to disparage, because with all respect, and I keep coming in and out, and I have a new and for me much more healthy and creative relationship with institutional arrangements, and that enables me to be here and speak with you today. So the point being that for me, this breakdown moment was actually my critical breakthrough. And that is what I want to address when I'm talking with you today about transformational creative coaching. Because sometimes what we feel might be our breakdown moment, or our block, or we just can't get through this saboteur, or whatever it is that's eating us or preventing us from getting to our most creative aspiration. Maybe we're an academic and we have a lot on our plate, especially right now. I mean, everyone is having to switch over to online platforms, and some of us are better trained than others at the digital technology. So there's all manner and many of things on our plate. While at the same time, maybe this is a time where we want to write or finish that great American novel or Irish poem, or wherever you are in the world, or that concerto or creative piece that's been languishing, and for all the many so-called reasons. Okay, so I say so-called because sometimes we need to be a little bit unreasonable with ourselves by questioning what those reasons that recur: when I retire, when I have enough money, when this, when that. And then these delaying tactics build up our procrastination and give rise to all kinds of anxieties. Now, this may not speak to all of you, but some of you might start to feel a little ripple, an internal ripple, and I would just encourage you, because I'm starting to feel it myself, to just take a little short breath. Because the good news is that you're not stuck with it. We are not stuck with our habitual mind. This I do know, because I have tested that water many times over. And while the habits may still keep coming up, I can now recognize and redirect, at least know what I'm doing. So if I know that I'm procrastinating, at least I know what's going on. And better yet, that I now have tools to redirect and get back into my creative alignment. So that brings me to just finish this bit up about the identity slot. So, and then I'll be done, with all about me, because it's really not about me at all. It's really about the much larger resource of creativity, which is yours and ours, and wherever we may find ourselves grounded and rooted in place, or even displaced because we get to source it from wherever we are. And this I have learned the hard way. So it comes back to what I was sharing about my breakdown moment of leaving the ivory tower, which was also a moment of, and when I say moment, it wasn't instantaneous. It was, really a bunch of moments strung together. So, and in this process came the realization that I could never outperform my identity. In other words, whatever label I gave myself, then that was the label that was more or less glued to my forehead. Okay, so once in an acting class, we did an exercise where we put, everyone was given a little sticky with a job title on it, something to that effect. And we weren't able to see it, and we just stuck it, we had to stick it on our forehead, and only other people could see us. And then they were to relate to us according to our slot. And it was very interesting, to try to see how we consciously and unconsciously relate to what we believe to be the case. And that goes for what we believe when we tell ourselves. That self-narrative often shows up in the limitation narratives that we tell ourselves, the saboteurs, as well as how we perceive and interrelate with the world around us, those relational aesthetics, if you will, for those of you who are familiar with those terms. So I found that in myself, I had hit the wall of it, so to speak, that I could not outperform my identity of that label that I had tacked onto my forehead, or others had tacked on to me. And so it was actually a process of shedding in order to go beyond. So those were not, those were not pain-free times, like shedding. I don't know about for other kinds of animals when they lose their skin, if it's completely painless, but I would imagine that there's a moment where, maybe you're a little raw while as you're slipping on one skin and into another. So these are the ingredients, if you will, that inform some of the tools that I work with when I work with people around creativity and the transformational aspects. So transformational creative coaching, okay, so that's just kind of another label in a way that I'm mindful not to get hung up on. Nonetheless, there are times where naming what we're doing is also a conscious act of awareness, like noting, oh, okay, this feeling is arising, I feel anxious, or so that you can transform it. The same with any kind of project. So the transformational part of working with saboteurs, on the one hand, those things that are self-generated, self-created, and self-perpetuating, okay, because they become habits unless we learn how to stop the habit mind from really engraving it into our, it does in fact become engraved into the neurological system. So we're kind of like an autoresponder, unless we consciously redirect those self-generated as well as the obstacles. So I do make a distinction. I mean, clearly being in the middle of a pandemic, having limited access to technological bells and whistles, in my case, that is a certain kind of obstacle to recognize that. So these are external obstacles that when we work with the transformational parts of our being and our seeing and our doing and our creating, then we can make a discernment and a decision about whether such an obstacle is something that we can move with, move around, move through, or sometimes, you know, like with this pandemic, certain things we just have to wait it out while we work with what we can. So the first part is to distinguish between the inner saboteurs and the outer obstacles, and that will also help to know how to approach something like a new technology if you have to learn it for your teaching, or even moving your theater production online or your exhibition online, or how are you going to show the world your creative genius? No, we're not out there in commingling. What else can we create? And that, I think, is a beautiful challenge too for us creatives, is that we have an opportunity in crisis to find new ways of connecting and creating. So the three pillars of transformational creative coaching then are the transformational part, the creative part, and the coaching part. I've spoken a little bit, get all my toys over here, about the transformational, and if we were together, I would like to share with you an actual exercise. Since we're not together, I would rather than suggest to you that mindset is a key component to the development of transformational tools. So what do I mean by mindset? I mean, for some of you, this might be very basic, and so please bear with me. Those of you who might have a meditation practice, is a form of at least quieting the mind so that we can construct our mindset. Sometimes it's just like a 30-second tune-in. You know, sometimes when I'm working with artists, and oftentimes, you know, a lot of the creatives I work with, and not in a disparaging way, I mean, I suffer from the same disease of too many ideas. We have so many ideas because we're so high octane, you know, we're so plugged into creative source, and it's just sometimes download is just like, whoo. So how do we hold the space of our creative ideas? And so we sometimes just need a tune up or a tune in to become aware, to direct our attention. I'm going to talk about that in terms of attention setting as part of intention, and to just allow, and then to know also where to put things to get into action. So for those of you who are going to stay in the session with me, now that you've heard my very long preamble, it's actually not so much a preamble as integral to what follows or flows. I would ask that send me an email. Okay, so if I can figure out how to put in the chat, I will put in the chat my email address, so I can send you some of these worksheets that I'm referencing, and then you can have the tools yourself to work with or experiment with. So I would normally want to just center with you, connect to the mind, body, spirit, and attune to these elements, the elements of change, the inner elements, the outer elements, and as artists, you know, we understand that the true alchemy of being able to bring the elements together in a way that we as artists can reshape, can reword, can reconfigure, and create new forms with what is available to us. We are resourcing. So we're always working with the resources. So moving into the second pillar of the creative is you. The creative is who you are. The creative is what you do. And the creative is not separate from you and what flows through you as your creative work. So I'd like to invite you now, let's see, would now be the time to to take some inventory, a moment of reflection about your own creative work. And here's where we get to focus on what it is that might be your burning desire of this particular moment in time, your creative project. And again, because I don't know who's in the room, and I'm going to have to take my best guess that many of you are either educators, performers, visual artists. And so whatever is calling to you right now, what is having the loudest conversation with you, as just calling for your attention, like, see me, feed me, pay attention to me, love me. What is that project that is needing your watering, your attention? And maybe keep that in mind. Right now, while you keep that in mind, I want to talk about something that I call a reflective inventory. So again, if you email me, I can actually send you the worksheet, because on my iPad, I was not able to upload the document. Normally, I would just hand it to you. So I'm just going to share with you an outline. Of course, you can feel free to jot down, take what you like, leave the rest. But I'm happy to send it to you to work with. A personal and reflective inventory worksheet. When we take inventory, just by way of language, we are in fact taking stock, like a grocer takes stock, takes inventory. So it can mean a range of things, from actual counting, like making checklists. We're all really good at the to-do list and not maybe as practiced in the ta-da list, like, look what I have done, how can I appreciate and take notice of what I have accomplished. Okay, we load ourselves with the worry of what we haven't done, the to-do list, which is why in the work that I do with creatives, I tend to move a bit away from a strictly to-do list, because they never end. How many of you have ever completely finished a to-do list without adding to it or starting a new one? Never, right? Because there's always something to do. One would hope that would be what we hope most for, to do. So they do have a time and place. How I prefer to think about it and work with creative project direction is to think about what we do in our creative activities as actionables. So these are things that we do them by actually doing them, in other words, so not just making a list about them. So how do we get into action? Because one action creates another. So let me give you a very brief example of one of my clients she was actually a former student of mine at the California College of the Arts, and several years later, came to me having not created a painting in almost 2 or 3 years since she had graduated, and she is a beautiful painter. So we talked about like what was going on for her, what's going on in her life, and where was she physically set up to paint? What was her studio like? Well, her studio had become basically a gardening shed, so all the tools for gardening and the lawnmower, and so she would have to navigate these obstacles. So again, an example of real physical obstacles. She had created an obstacle course in her studio, but what was generating the obstacle course were actually saboteurs, things that for whatever reason she was not allowing herself to get to her painting. So she kept blocking it with these actual physical objects. So the actionable, very, very first thing, and I talk about micro steps. The poet David White talks beautifully, much more eloquently than I, about micro disciplines, which is a form of actionable, but it's actionable with an intention. That's how I understand it. You know, what is the thought that we're thinking, that we're putting into action, is a kind of disciplinary practice. And so for this young woman, the first thing that we concluded as her actionable, was to remove the lawnmower from the studio. So I know it probably seems very basic, and yet, because it represented such a breakdown moment, by removing it, it actually created a clearing and allowed for a breakthrough. So 6 weeks into my breakdown to breakthrough program, I call it, not surprisingly, she was actually sharing paintings because she knew how to document share. So when we take inventory, we take stock, and this can mean anything from these checklists that could include to-do lists, or these actionables as I'm referring to them, to review what has worked for us and what hasn't worked for us in the past. What are the tools and resources that we can cultivate to create solutions to address what's not working right now? When we take personal inventory, it's also an opportunity to reflect on our past, or to reflect on what's not working or what hasn't worked up to now, with new insights. You know, these are our breakthroughs. These are our ahas. Okay, new insights that we're not the person that we were, nor are we the person that we will become. We are just who we show up as right now. And this is a first step toward creating a roadmap. So I don't have time. I mean, obviously, this is actually the process of transformational creative coaching is in fact a step-by-step process that includes making a roadmap to get from where we are to where you want to be. But by taking this personal inventory, you get to see that. You get to see where you've been, what was working, what wasn't working, to get you closer to where you want to go. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing that I would suggest that you do, and again, I know earlier I was talking about being boxed in by labels and how naming has its place. And right here is an opportunity to name your project. This is the place for naming. Because when you name your project, you give clarity to it. You honor it, you know, it's like an honorific, the name itself. And the name doesn't have to be fixed. You know, this is the beauty of your own creativity. You can do whatever you want, wherever it takes you. So it's like, as if someone were asking you, where are you going from here? So, you know, if I'm in LA and I want to drive up the coast to San Francisco, I could say, well, I want to get to San Francisco, but my next stop is going to be San Luis Obispo, because, you know, I don't want to drive 8 hours without stopping. So where am I going from here? I have to have a kind of roadmap. And again, by naming the project, it can be anything as general as, say, the student example that I gave you. She wanted to create a painting based on photo archived images on the web. Okay, doesn't matter the subject. So her project was did create a hand painted digital image. Nothing fancy. It was just purely descriptive. You know, a descriptive label. Or if you're very clear, like say you are writing your next great novel and you know what the name of it is. Like I actually had the experience of when I was working on my second book, of seeing the title of the book very clearly, which turns out it's called No Deal. No Deal, Indigenous Arts and the Politics of Possession. I saw the title very clearly, and then I had to write the book. So it was kind of like seeing that the book was already written. I already saw it, the title, and I saw it as a book. Then all I had to do was write the book. That's all. So all you have to do is your creative project. Maybe it's creating a new curriculum for this hybrid world of who knows what will be in the next half year of still being in a pandemic. Maybe your creative project is just my new curriculum. So what's going to be the roadmap, and how are you going to get there with ease? So that's what taking a personal inventory will allow for you. So I want you to think about an inventory in 3 columns. The first column is A. What worked for you in the past in relation to this project that you've named, or what is working for you currently? And then B, in your B column, what things, if they did not change, would produce the same undesired or unfulfilled results if repeated? It's that old habitual groove I was referring to. So column B would be these things that are no longer serving you. What is not working? Saboteurs, you could start to see that they are self-generated obstacles, that this is just now not the time, because let's say you want to do a live performance in a theater, but we're still in a pandemic, so that's not going to work right now, right? But it might work to create a rollout, what can you do to excite people and get them ready for it over the next 6 months? That might be a way of redirecting, reformulating. So, think back over the past months or semesters or years, or if you keep a journal, look in your journal notes or highlight these entries that have, in some way that you may not have noticed before, may have foreshadowed your current creative project. And then practice with the contemplation that, whatever the name of your project is, my show, my painting, my curriculum, my book, whatever your project is, already exists. It already exists, or it wouldn't be calling to you. And all you have to do is realize it. Okay? And so that's what the creative part is, the project. The coaching part of transformational creative coaching is the how. All you have to do is realize it. But how? Well, sometimes we need support. Sometimes we need tools. Sometimes we need accountability. Sometimes we need just ass in chair. Whatever the tools are. The coaching part is to get you on that pathway to keep you aligned with your purpose, because your purpose is that creative calling. That is your why. So when I described to you earlier about my family history and my professional breakdowns, this was all by way of saying that these life events also have strengthened my purpose, because each time was an opportunity to take personal inventory and come back to my creative calling. Okay, so in the interest of time, I just want to kind of wrap up on the inventory thing. And again, please send me your email and I will send you the worksheet. I'll also send you some inspirational content from my blog about some of the things that I'm talking about, and from my soon-to-be workbook. See, my workbook is already complete. All I have to do is complete it. But I'm happy to share some of these things with you. In fact, I welcome your feedback. So please do email me. And to finish up on the worksheet, so my email address will be in the chat. Just hold on a sec. You've got your column A of what's working, what has worked, your column B of what's not working, what's no longer serving you. Again, this is really in relation to the project that you've named. Okay, maybe something you've been working on, maybe something you want to be working on. And then your column C is, what did I learn from those things that weren't serving me? And then what can I do differently to get it into column A? Things that are working, you know, how can I redirect? What needs, you know, what's got to give here? Okay, so this is why it's a personal reflective inventory, because you really need to go into your own inner mind and consider what's, you know, what needs to maybe transform for you. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a major, like, you don't have to leave your tenured job. You know, you don't have to, you know, leave your spouse or your children. You know, you don't, maybe you just have to take the lawnmower out of the garage. You know, I mean, everybody's situation is their situation. Okay, so that's the assessment part. So I'm big on the A's: awareness, acknowledgement, allowing, assessment, accountability, and achieving. So send me your email, I'll send you my A list. My email address is tressa@transformational-creative-coaching.com. Okay, and you can check out my website, same place. Transformational-creative-coaching.com. Tressa. If I forgot to say, please forgive me. I'm Tressa. Oh, this talking just to myself is quite the experience. But I'm not, because I know you're here with me now, and I'm so pleased. I want to just maybe wind down with respect to time and your time with what I mentioned earlier as setting an intention. So we set an intention for our creative work and our practice. This helps to keep us aligned. Another A word, love it. And helps to give attention with an A to the project at hand. So when I was first thinking about creative project work and setting an intention around it, what does that look like? What does that mean? So I started to brainstorm, and again, if I were in the room with you, I'd be asking you, what are some other words for intention, or what comes to mind, you know, without thinking. Don't overthink, just let's roll it out. Brainstorm, goal, commitment. These are words that people give me in workshops, so I just collect them. Honor, intention, purpose. Okay, dictionary definition, disambiguation. Wow, that's that's a conversation stopper. So intention is disambiguation. So clearly is related to, well, not being ambiguous. What is not being ambiguous is being clear. How do we get to clarity? Got to work with those pesky saboteurs. And then most interesting to me, and with respect to the family heritage and the historical trauma that both my Irish and Jewish families underwent in the respective diasporas, the medical dictionary definition of intention is the healing process of a wound. The healing process of a wound. So where does the creativity come from? Right, like Leonard Cohen says, there's a crack in everything, and that's where the light gets in. That's where the light gets in, that's where the creativity seeps through. That is your unstoppable flow. And how do you stay connected to it is by setting and resetting your intention, putting your attention on your intention. Okay, so if we were in the room together, we would do a quick little exercise, a little mirroring exercise about your project and how to set an intention to really get some traction, because once we lay out the roadmap in this process of transformational creative coaching, then we get into momentum, and in momentum we get into velocity, and from velocity we move to completion. And what is completion but wholeness, the healing process of a wound through creativity. So people out there, if you're still with me, if you're resonating with anything that I have shared with you today, I would so love to hear from you, get your feedback, give you support on your creative projects, and help you also to identify what I call inspired vision. You know, your creative project, that thing that you named today, that's just a small part, I would imagine, of something much greater inspired vision. Like I may say that my achievable goal for the summer might be to collect my poems and photographs into a proposal that I can send for publication. Okay, so that's my project. It has a name. It's called Postcards from Indian Country, USA. And I see it coming to fruition. All I have to do is take the micro steps and get into momentum. The inspired vision is to be an author. To be an author who sells books and who goes on tour and talks about books and can actually make a living doing my creative work that way. And this way, you know, teaching, sharing, collaborating, and I hope inspiring. So if nothing else, then may that be a takeaway for you today. And then for the tangible takeaways, I do have this worksheet I would love to send to you. And I will also send you the blog excerpt that I mentioned from the workbook. And if you contact me very soon, you know, because I'm also about fast action as a way to really spark the momentum. So I would say, you know, within the next couple weeks to please, if you email me, I'll also offer you a free coaching session, and we can really kind of get into this more deeply than I would have had in the opportunity of this conference workshop, which I am so grateful to the organizers for letting me slide in and be with you today. I was really wishing and hoping it could have been in Galway. I love Galway and Ireland, obviously, of my heritage. And so maybe next year we'll see you in Perth, also another beautiful place. I've had the privilege to spend quite a bit of time in Australia. And I think that's a wrap. So thank you. And however this rolls out is how she rolls. Okay. I hope to hear from you. Tressa at transformational-creative-coaching.com. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great conference and be well. Travel safely through the Zoomosphere and see you hopefully live next year. Bye.